So day 3 of preseason is over. You're probably going to see this video when day 4 is over, because it's going to be recorded before that, but John Wall and Kevin Durant look like themselves. They, of course, both back from injuries. KD from the Achilles, and John Wall from the Achilles and some other stuff, and it's pretty impressive to see that in preseason. Preseason has never been this exciting, and it's really fun to watch. Of course, you see a lot of rookies and all of that stuff, especially from a long break from like 8 of these teams, and probably a lot more of these, but just going to be really interesting how this does. Before I talk about people like KD, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, THT, subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the bell. Makes a really big difference. I'll give you 5 seconds to do that. Okay, hopefully you did that. And first, let's start with Kevin Durant. So KD, of course, got injured with that Achilles tear in Game 5 of the NBA Finals, and then in free agency, he left the Warriors to join Kyrie Irving to the Brooklyn Nets. And he, of course, missed his whole season, and KD's back in preseason. It's been so fun to watch that. Every basketball fan will love it. And so we're just going to be detail analyzing it. So Kevin Durant basically first started off with that dunk, which you can probably see right now. And this just showed that he still has explosiveness. He put up 15 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists in 24 minutes. He then hit right here DeAndre Jordan on the roll man, which can show like he has chemistry. And KD did pretty well. Then, of course, Kyrie Irving did pretty well. And because he's Kyrie Irving and also the star. And it's going to be really interesting just how Kevin Durant and these Nets can go. A lot of people think that the Nets will fail because of the chemistry issues. Kyrie Irving has been doing some questionable stuff off the court. And it's just going to be really interesting how this Nets team go. They, of course, are really deep because they were always deep, especially while adding Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And just Kyrie was also dominant. We can't forget about that. And it's going to be very interesting how KD and Kyrie, how much they play, because Kyrie had some injury issues, and KD, of course, had the Achilles tear. And it's going to be really interesting how they do it. Then right here, you can see he's just posting up Rui. And that mid-range, he's always had it. Even with the Achilles tear, he's always going to have the mid-range jump shot, which that's just his signature move. And it's going to be really interesting how just this whole Nets thing go. Will they work? I think they probably will. Now, it's going to be very interesting. Are they going to be a top 3 seed? But it just all matters how they play in the playoffs. And I think they're going to do pretty well. They might have to still fix some chemistry issues. That might be a bit of a problem. I think I can do that. Hopefully Kyrie Irving just stays consistent. And it's going to be really interesting just how they do all this. And of course, I think they did start Spencer Dinwiddie, because I know Karis LeVert did not play. I think they're actually going to start Spencer because he's another ball handler that can play. And then KD, talking about him again, as you can see here, he's just fading on Isaac Bonga, the GOAT. And he just showing like that unstoppable move that he always had. That's, of course, a good sign that KD's back, which you always want. And then talking about the lineup again, they're probably going to have KD, Kyrie, Jared Allen, I'm guessing Spencer over Cares, and then probably like Joe Harris. I'm not exactly sure about that yet. But it's going to be really interesting how this Nets team play. They, of course, got Landry Shamet, who's a big contributor. And it's going to be really interesting just how this whole team goes. Of course, KD looks pretty good. And then also, another play he did was that we had like that Kyrie half-court pass to KD. You'll probably see it later. And then he had that reverse. So that shows that like hopefully they get some chemistry. That was like a beautiful connection if you were watching that game. And it was just really exciting to see this Nets team. And hopefully KD and Kyrie don't remove the stigma that the Nets had before they got KD and Kyrie. And it's going to be really interesting. There was also a KD and Kyrie pick and roll once where Kyrie hit a 3, which is always a good sign. They're probably going to do that more. And Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni as the coaching staff, they look pretty good. If like the play wasn't going well, they were able to adapt, mainly because they have KD and Kyrie, one of the best top 20 players in the NBA. And it's just going to be really interesting how this Nets team does. They, of course, one of the most talented teams in the whole Eastern Conference. KD, if he could return to about like 90% of himself, he's still like a top 7 player. And now the one problem with KD is his defense, which was a bit of a problem. You probably saw it before, but he was out-hustled by Rui Hachimura on the boards, so that was not very good. But there's the half-court passing, and it's just going to be really interesting. Of course, KD, he used to be really good on the defensive end because he was so long, and now with these Achilles injury, he might not want, because he's like 31, to spend that much energy on the defensive end. It's going to be really interesting how this Nets team, and will it even work out? It probably will, but I still think it's going to be really interesting. Then moving on to John Wall, he showed so much explosiveness. He looked like a lot of himself, and it looks really interesting. In the first game, he has 13 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds. Like I said, showed explosiveness. He passed Kobe White a lot, so that's always a good sign because Kobe White is a decent defender, and just passing your defender is always a good sign. That's just what John Wall can do. There was always that pick and roll / pick and pop with DeMarcus Cousins, and because of that Kentucky connection, that proved to be pretty well. John Wall also showed the ability to shoot, like that mid-range right there, and he also hit, I think, 2 threes or 1 3, so that's always a good thing. He just had that pass IQ still, and that passing ability that prime John Wall had, which is definitely a good sign, especially after that Achilles tear. But he's always gonna have that just thinking. And then in the second game, he had 21 points, 8 assists, and 2 rebounds, which is still pretty good. And I personally did not watch that game because I was a bit busy, but I'm guessing that he can still score with his explosiveness. He said he was personally 110%. I mean, of course, that's not real, but that's always a good sign that he believes in himself. He said that he was injured his whole career, and now with this whole break, he's fully healthy. So that's always a good sign for all Rockets fans. Cousins also looked good. He had 3 3-pointers in the first game with 14 points, and that connection looked really good. Like I said, that Kentucky connection, they always wanted to play together. And it's just going to be really interesting how this duo goes. Hopefully, James Harden wants to stay. There was a report that he still doesn't want to stay. That's pretty sad as a Rockets fan. As someone who is a Rockets fan, I'm not, but all Rockets fans, basically what I mean. And I really think Harden should just give this one a chance. This is a good team. They definitely have a lot of talent, especially with all those shooters. John Wall used those shooters as an advantage, which he definitely needed with Cousins, Daniel House, Eric Gordon, and just all those players that are pretty useful. And it's just going to be really interesting how this Rockets team goes. And the last person we're going to be talking about is Talen Tucker. As a Lakers fan, it's so good to see THT be really good. I was really high on THT, especially in the Rockets series, and he just flashed so much potential as a 6'5" shooting guard with like a 7-foot wingspan as a second-round pick. That's insane value. And of course, in the first game, he put up 19 points and 10 rebounds. Not on the best efficiency, but he was back from the NBA, so that's fine because he was a bit rusty, but that's still very impressive. But in his second game, 33 points, 10 rebounds, like 3 steals. He was hitting those mid-range step-back jump shots. He was hitting that 3-point step-back jump shot. He was getting around the paint like it was nothing. Marcus Gassol's passes were amazing, and he got like 3 and 1s. That's what you want. And then Kuzma also did pretty good. He got some assists with them. And I'm not exactly sure how many minutes THT will play. Frank Vogel admittedly said that this is going to be a problem because they didn't expect THT to be that good. So some other people might have to like get less minutes. But that's a good problem because that means you're too deep. But I mean, that's always a good thing, I guess. In the playoffs, you're always going to have to cut it. But THT showed so much potential on both sides of the ball while also being able to play make a little bit, which is always a good sign. And I am really happy that we have THT. He showed so much potential, and I'm just really happy we have him. As a Lakers fan, he just showed so much dominance. I know it's only the preseason, and I'm probably overreacting, but this just shows potential. And potential is what, as a second round pick, you just need to show potential and prove to others that you're a worthy NBA player. And I'm really happy with THT. He was splashing threes, getting around the paint like it was nothing, just making his own shot with his shot creation. Especially in college, he was said as like a good spot-up shooter, was able to create his own shot, a decent defender, but especially with having Frank Vogel, who's a defensive coach, it definitely helped. But I'm really high on THT. So yeah, that's just gonna be a quick video about my overreaction, I guess, to preseason. Hopefully you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you all next time.